Hello and welcome to AI Security Ops Podcasts. My name is Joff Thyer. I am here with Derek Banks and Brian Fehrman, and we're here to talk about AI security. But before I do that, I would like to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security, where if you would like, we can help you with an AI technology security assessment of your artificial intelligence deployment. So please feel free to reach out to us. Go visit our website or send an email. I believe we have a sales at blackhillsinformationsecurity.com or blackhillsinfosec.com. Anyway, come visit us. We'd love to help you. So today we are going to be talking about Agentic AI in the context of red teaming, augmenting the human. So let's start with level setting this thing. When we say, so this is also interesting to me because in the artificial intelligence space, everything is moving so fast that terminology is like totally shifting and changing, right? So together, when we say Agentic AI red team, what does that mean to you guys? I don't know. Let's start with Mr. Fehrman. Brian, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think in this context that we're talking about, we really need to clarify of what kind of agentic AI red teaming we're focusing on, because it could mean really one of two things, right? It could mean that you are doing a red team assessment against agentic AI, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is using agentic AI to assist with a red team assessment against other infrastructure, which could potentially be other AI infrastructure, or it could be more of your traditional network security stuff, web application testing, but basically allowing AI to have the ability to reach out and do things, as we talked about before, giving it limbs so that it can reach out, it can get in information and then make decisions based upon that information, and kind of try to help automate some of the testing that might have been traditionally done manually.
Okay. So that's really cool. I think we'd all be lying if we didn't say that we hadn't used artificial intelligence, particularly large language models, in our red teaming efforts already. Of course, they're really good natural language processors. They're really good next token predictors. They're great at spitting out or generating information for us. So we're already using it. But the layer that Brian's adding on is we're bolting on agency. We're bolting on something that allows that AI to actually take action on its generative output as part of that red teaming effort. Derek, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when I think about the definition here, I'd like to add on autonomy, right? Like, so basically the red teaming agent, or the AI powered hacker, as it were, would be the primary driver of testing for cross-site scripting or something along those lines. And it seems like at the moment that what I've seen in this space is primarily web app stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's other things out there. I learn about new stuff every day. But the one I'm thinking about in particular is Expo. So XBOW. At the moment, the Expo red teaming agent is number one at HackerOne, the number one hacker, which as Jason said in the previous webcast today, a lot of bug bounty folks aren't real happy about that. And, it's my impression. I've not used the product at all, but it's my impression, just kind of reading and learning about it and talking to folks, that currently it's really good at finding the low-hanging fruit. And so while we're still in the, the autonomy, doing things on its own, I still think that there needs to be a human in the loop at the moment. But my other thought is reading, the AI 2027 papers, we're still in the era of, how do they put it? Not a useless agent, but kind of...
I think they said fumbling agent. So
yeah, kind of fumbling agent. Yeah. And shortly, and then we'll see if it comes true, they're talking about early 2026 of really being the rise of more effective agents. And I think the concern is that knowledge work is at the moment a pretty highly paid position, right? I mean, relatively speaking. And so if you start going down the work road of having these agents that do really well at knowledge work, then that creates obvious problems, right? So anyway, like I think of autonomy and being able to go do things on its own.
Yeah, so, we think about autonomy, and that's a really good point. It's able to do things on its own. And I think the other thing that's kind of was implied by what you answered there was not only is it good at finding low-hanging fruit, one of the things that a lot of people out there don't realize if they're not in the penetration testing industry is that providing adequate coverage when you are testing something is frankly drudgery. There's a lot of work.
Hard.
It's very hard work.
I mean,
if you're looking, well, let's give the example of a web app or maybe an API. If you're looking at a web application or an API and you want to provide coverage, in other words, you want to test every single distinct API field, every single distinct form input on some kind of HTML form, that's a lot of work. And not only it's a lot of work, it's a lot of drudgery, and it's a lot of very detailed keeping track of things. And this is something where autonomy can be a great help, right, Derek?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I've never missed anything on a web app or some other penetration test. I've definitely done a test and someone came behind me and I saw something they found. It's like, wow, how did I miss that? And if you're testing an API and you have 470 API endpoints test, it's a lot easier for a human to miss the one endpoint that doesn't require authentication, right? Or you think you covered it, but you missed that, like, it errored out for some reason. I mean, that's happened to me before too, right? There's a communication hiccup and some kind of scan. And so I think if I had an AI agent red teamer sixth sense helping me on every web app, I would like that.
Right. One of the other things that I think a lot of us talk about is the AI just going to replace me, right? Right now, where we stand, the AI requires us to intelligently prompt it and give it context in order for it to take generative and then furthermore agentic actions, right? So we still have to drive it right now. Having said that, one of the, I think, challenges that we are going to see with agentic-based accelerated task testing is kind of the way I think about it, because LLMs just give us task acceleration, ultimately, are we going to be deluged with output? This is the question that concerns me. Are we going to end up with so many findings or so many potential rabbit holes to go down that we actually make the problem worse for ourselves?
That was my experience here recently using Burt Ferns, right? I mean, no knock against Burt Ferns. I think it's really cool. But the plugin was adding stuff to the Burt suite, findings, and I'd get like 400 findings, and well, that's tough to deal with too, right? So, I think the answer to your question is yes.
So, how do we approach that? Do we just bolt on another AI to filter down the output? I mean, Brian, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. AI all the way down, right? And up, for that matter. Yeah, but certainly we see it in multiple applications of AI, whether we're talking about from an offensive standpoint or especially like in a defensive standpoint where they're trying to pick out anomalous behavior. It's kind of a context problem, and also just the lack of some of the experience, I would say, of an actual person in terms of being able to determine what actually matters, what's important, what's actually a finding, and things that we should actually care about. Because it could turn out things that, like, yeah, technically, it shouldn't be done like that, or it should be fixed, but it doesn't really matter. Like, someone's probably not really going to be able to exploit it in any meaningful way, nor will it have any, kind of impact. And so it's kind of a tuning problem, like a lot of the other automated products that have come out before AI. I mean, AI it's not like we haven't been trying to automate things to help us out, before AI came along.
Since
we've been trying to do
computers.
yeah, exactly. So basically since computers. And so really, I mean, it comes down to, like a tuning problem, filtering issues, and just kind of really dialing it in. But yeah, certainly we're still at the point where it's not like, it's going to replace people flat out by any means.
So the question that always occurs to me is, what if the AI kind of outthinks us? What if it actually does something and finds some sort of vulnerability? Let's stay with the web app context for a minute. That we suspect is really a vulnerability, but we're having trouble getting our heads around exactly what it's telling us, or maybe we're having trouble thinking around how to validate what it's found. I mean, I suppose a related question is the AI the boss here, or are we the boss?
Well, I think it comes back to one of the still heavily researched topics of explainability in AI. So it's cool when AI has outputs and makes decisions, and you look at it and you're like, oh, that's really cool, but why did you make that decision? Or in the other case of what you were describing, of just like not fully understanding it, of what the output is and how it came to that conclusion. And so I think that the work that people are really pushing in terms of explainability, of being able to see why did it make the decisions that it made, and how can we actually take action upon that decision, I think is really important to keep in mind as we're pushing the AI technology forward.
Yeah, it's something that I keep thinking about when it comes to AI in general is you get generative output, but a factor that always plays in is the depth of knowledge and experience of the person that's interpreting that output. And that's going to vary. That's a variable, right? As is the creativity of the AI that's generating the output. Derek, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Brian. Like, interpretability is like a whole separate thing, and to what you're referring to is if it finds something that we can't wrap our heads around. Like, so in the web app context, I mean, you'd have to make a stretch. Like, would it find a new class of vulnerability? I mean, sure, maybe, right? Or would it chain vulnerabilities together in such a creative way? You're like, wow, I didn't know cross-site scripting would lead to that, right? Yeah, maybe. But certainly outside of information security, outside of web app testing, I've seen stuff like this already. And like John liked to point this out, that the researchers that were using AI to create some kind of Wi-Fi chip, some kind of wireless chip design, and the AI was creating designs that the engineers are like, well, I don't even know what this does, right?
Yeah.
So I think that precedent's already been set. And so maybe outside of the context of web apps, look, I'm not saying that some super intelligent AI might be able to find, I basically just send this sequence of packets and I get into everything, right? Like, sure, that's a possibility. But I feel like that, when talking about is AI going to replace jobs, I mean, I think all bets are off when we get to, a certain level. And I think that's beyond the scope of this podcast or really what we do at Black Hills. That's more of a societal scope. And I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole probably all day.
That's a deep rabbit hole. Let's move on to sort of context. So one of the other challenges that we have, and this is generally a penetration testing challenge, is, do we adequately understand the business context of the application or the product that we're testing? Certainly do we understand it as well as our customer understands it? And then you extend that to AI. When AI is doing agentic or even non-agentic, when it's actually being prompted and giving us guidance during the testing process, how much business context does it have? Is it adequate? Is that just in the prompting? I mean, where are we with that? And I don't know. My first, I'm just going to respond to my own question. My first response is it's probably going to depend on a combination of things. One would be how the tooling that we're using is configured to communicate with the AI and take the agentic actions. But I think it's also going to depend on how well the actual prompting is constructed within that tooling and whether it's configurable and whether we can give it some more context. Anyway, your thoughts on that one, Brian?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, because even as us as penetration testers run into this exact problem ourselves, right? I mean, especially when we're going into an environment, assume compromise where we're pivoting around an environment or doing internal testing, especially it seems to be where this issue would really pop up, where you might find something that's like, wow, this is really bad. And then you speak with the customer and they're like, no, actually, it's just like a test server that literally has
those are honeypot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
congratulations,
yeah.
you found our honeypot. Yeah, but you don't know. And obviously it's going to be the same thing with AI. And so the things that you mentioned in terms of good prompting, also you can look into things like RAG. So basically setting up some kind of a RAG system that describes to the AI what critical components are, or these other test components that we don't really care about, development environments, so that it can also spend its time wisely, we'll say, right? I mean, obviously we're not directly paying it, but we are paying for it in the form of power consumption, API calls. So, you want it to be efficient, but then you also want the results to be meaningful. You don't want it to spit out, a bunch of stuff for your development test environment that you don't care about. You want it to be, production critical things you're looking at.
Yeah, so I keep coming back to this in some of the tooling that I'm working on as well. The same concept of the AI is only as good as the knowledge and experience that I put into the prompt construction, right? And this is going to be true of any agentic actions that tooling takes. It's going to be true of any tooling implementation. The AI is only good as much as we guide it right now, right? As much as we provide it the adequate guidance in the form of advanced prompt engineering techniques. And I remember very early on with Derek, actually, when we were talking sort of data science together, we were nerding out one day and we were joking that I can't believe prompt engineering is like even a thing, man. I mean, this is just so weird, right? And now once you get in deep and your sleeves up, you start to realize, oh yeah, in natural language processing, prompt engineering is a really big thing. Like it's not a small thing. It's like for real. Anyway, Derek, your thoughts on the business context and sort of that prompting challenge.
I mean, I think, when I first started pen testing at Black Hills in 2014, it took a little while. Like up into that point in my career, I'd only seen, a handful of networks, right? A handful of computing environments. And it took a little while to develop the skill of being able to take architecture diagrams and questions and formulating in my own mind, like what the system does, right? Because if you're especially like on a complex web app, like knowing how the data flows beforehand is very helpful. And so I think that context is important. Back to the Expo, example I used earlier. Jason Haddix was telling me earlier that he knows some of the bug bounty folks that went to go help the work there and fine tune the models and fix those prompts and basically guide it with the right kind of context to be successful. And so I think that's kind of still where we're at, but we keep building and building and building. And I think that we're pretty close, if not already. I mean, I would assume that the frontier model developers are using AI to develop AI at this point. And so certainly I use AI to help me have better prompts. I mean, if you ask ChatGPT to create a prompt for you, it does pretty good. So I think that, once the seed is there, like when we go down like more and more automation, that, the need for the human in that context is going to be minimized and diminished. And I think, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, in 2027, 2028, like really does AI start to take knowledge worker jobs or not?
Yeah. Yeah, I did throw that seed out there, and I think that seed is of like, are my knowledge worker days over? I mean, that whole concept is sort of hanging over us in a way.
I mean, I'm still on the fence. It doesn't keep me up at night, but I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I can either go be an AI janitor or I could start a landscaping business.
Right.
I don't know.
I tell you one thing, and this I hear a lot. It is just like any wave of technology. This is another wave to surf, and you better get on board. That's all. I think that's the important part.
Well, yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I look at this kind of like, it's different than other like waves. Like when cloud started, I think there was probably a lot of talk, and y'all tell me if y'all remember differently, that as we move to the cloud, there'll be less need for IT workers, and there'll be less demand internally. I don't know. Do you think that was true? I don't think so.
No, right. It's just gonna
turn out you needed cloud specialists.
Right, like everything, it'll change the nature of our work. But anyway, that's a tangent. Let's steer this back to this discussion. So the very next discussion point before we finish out is, what happens when we turn loose our AI? It takes these agentic actions as part of the red teaming operations that we are undergoing, and the AI breaks something critical to the organization. What do we do at that point? Where are we at?
Did I tell y'all about messing around with the Portswigger AI? If you're not aware, and for those watching, Portswigger has a feature now in Burp Suite where you can take one of the findings and essentially verify it with AI. So you click the AI button, and it'll take your cross-site scripting and go through a series of steps with the AI feature to try and demonstrate how you actually exploit it. And it wasn't me, it was another person at Black Hills, I think it was Jack, who said that they tried it, and to test a command injection rather than catting Etsy password, which is the classic command injection, cat ... all the way to Etsy password, right? It did a remove, an RM command, Etsy password.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not test that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, if you were able to remove the Etsy password file as in the context of a web application, that is a serious finding, right? That's not just command injection, that's other stuff, right? But I don't think that's a good way to test it, right? So who's responsible? The person who pushed the AI button, I think, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, can we, this is a bit of a rhetorical statement, but can we go back to the customers and go, hey, we didn't do it, the AI did it, right?
I don't think they're going to take that as an answer, right, Brian?
Yeah, I don't think our customer would appreciate that. I don't know, Brian, have you got some thoughts on this too?
Yeah, I mean, it's like with other, again, I mean, we've had automated tools for a long time now, and it's like with a lot of the other automated tools that we might use, like different scanning stuff or password spraying programs, or
not that I've ever broken anything with password spraying.
Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, we have all these other things that, like, sure, they're can be widely used, and in certain situations they certainly make sense, or a lot of situations, but ultimately still, like, it's the person using it that needs to be careful about that it is doing what they think it's going to do, and that it matches up with the environment, so that the expectations of the environment match what the tool is expecting and what it's going to do. I mean, certainly there is some onus on the developers as well too. So if they claim that their product is 100% safe and it doesn't do A, B, or C, but then you run it and it does A, B, or C, well, I mean, that's a misrepresentation on their part, negligence. So they do share some of the responsibility there, but ultimately it's not going to be your customer. That the customer's not going to go after the developer, right? You're going to be the one there. You're going to be the point of contact. You're going to be the face of the problem. So, I mean, if you're going to be using AI or any of these other tooling, like, you have to be careful, and you're confident in it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I would, sort of from the pen tester perspective, from the offensive operator perspective, I would want my tooling to have deliberate confirmation steps built in to say, hey, I'm about to do this. Do you really want to do this thing? And I think that's a bit difficult,
if you're listening,
actually.
Please put that into,
into your AI development. Because yes, Burp Ference apparently does not have those confirmation steps. It just goes ahead and does things, which is a bit problematic.
Oh yeah, certainly. No, it's scary. Still need that human in the loop. Like I wouldn't personally at this point. I certainly wouldn't trust something to just let loose. Like I remember a tool that came out again, like back before AI was a thing for pivot testing. There was supposed to be like one click own the domain, and I think everyone's thoughts were no freaking way. Am I running that thing in a domain?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Works great if you give it a DA account to start too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So before we close out, what about the cost of entry? If you're like an internal red teaming organization, or you're a consultancy like ourselves, I mean, should we even do this? Can we just put our heads in the sand and go? Let's go back to good old manual testing and be happy with it, or
we can't do that. That's the worst thing to do. The head in the sand thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost a silly question, right? I think we all know that the productivity improvement that we get out of leveraging artificial intelligence technologies is worth the juice is worth the squeeze. At least that's my thought.
I think my advice to and we have some of these folks here at BHIS still, and there probably always will be, is folks who are very anti, or maybe not anti, just very curmudgeonly about AI, and just it seems like most of the time, and I don't mean this in like a bad way, it's just they don't really have an understanding of like what the AI is and what it's doing, and like what they look at it differently, right? And once they learn, and I'll pick on Craig, right? Because I think he was an AI curmudgeon until he came and took our class, and now he's like, oh, I see. And so I think what I would say is just give it a chance and start using it to help with things like generating word lists for fuzzing APIs. Just things that take you a lot of manual time. Like look into getting AI to kind of help you with those things. Or, what I've been having a lot of luck with Claude is I've got a quick like thing that I need to write some Python for, and Claude, like on those one-off like little like, single task type of utilities, it is fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, I miss Derek calling me, because he used to always call me, say, I need a Python script. He doesn't call me anymore. He just calls Claude. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do miss talking to you. Okay, let's close it out. Let's summary of thoughts around this. Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot. Summarize for us the practical advice. What would you give security leader, maybe a consultant, some practical advice on this whole game of whether we should be doing this, the kinds of things we ought to be considering when we're doing this?
Yeah, certainly. So I think it's very much dependent on the organization, both in terms of what the mission of your organization is, as well as the size of your organization, the technologies that are being employed. But with that said, I do think that likely most organizations, one way or another, will benefit from augmenting their current practices using some kind of AI technology, whether or not they're, doing kind of like what Derek said of helping to automate kind of some of the grunt work with a generative side of things, all the way up to giving it some autonomy, or rather agency within the environment, allowing it to kind of take some of the low-hanging fruit, giving you continuous coverage within your environment, integrating it within your CI/CD pipelines, and just kind of taking away some of the burden of scope and kind of space that people would normally need to cover. But at the same time, obviously, just be careful in your implementation, the kind of agency that you're giving to it, and also be realistic in the expectations that you have of it. It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to be, let it loose and it's going to solve all of your problems. You don't need a security team anymore, whatever. That's just not the case. So certainly I would say embrace it, but be careful and be realistic.
Absolutely. I think my thoughts are always learn as much as you can. Go in with eyes wide open. Make sure you're being very observant. You're taking cautious, appropriate steps, and thinking about your risks as you go down that list. Derek, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think I can't remember where I heard this, so I apologize if you told this to me and I don't remember. But I would treat any AI like enterprise project at the moment as still like beta, right? And put the appropriate like security controls around that. And I wouldn't just, for example, turn on Copilot for everybody in my environment without understanding like really what that means. And so like Brian was saying, do some research and figure it out, maybe contact a third party firm to help you with that. And yeah, don't be afraid of it, but also don't give it all the family jewels.
Yeah, exactly. Verify everything. Verify everything. Trust but verify. And so that brings us, and of course, all of those comments, by the way, apply to augmenting the human red teamer, but they generally apply to any task that you give artificial intelligence, especially when you're considering agentic AI. So with that, let's close out the show. Thanks for listening, and keep on prompting, everybody. Bye-bye.